Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniegolu. So education takes center stage at a special event marking the 2024 Annual Day of the African Child. The commemorative event takes place every year to reaffirm the continent's collective commitment to the educational rights of children across Africa. It's been marked at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa under the theme, Education for All Children in Africa, the Time is Now. And here in Nigeria, the group known as Project Hope Alive has adopted that theme and has been outlining practical strategies to increase investment, improve resource allocation, and ensure equitable access to quality education for all Nigerian children, especially the most marginalized and vulnerable. It comes, as UNICEF says, 4 out of 5 African children can't read or understand simple text. So, well, will the billions of dollars needed be found to offset the dismal education funding in Nigeria and the continent? Well, one of the organizers of today's Project Hope Alive event, marking the 2024 Annual Day of the African Child, is Public Affairs Analyst Chibuzor Okereke, and he joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Just tell us a bit about the Annual Day of the African Child and what it's supposed to represent.
So this is a special day. It's actually started in 1976, June 16 to be precise, when the young students in Soweto, South Africa, protested the poor quality of learning and demanded that they should be taught in their own language and that education should be cultural so that they will understand what it's about. So in 1991, the Assembly of Heads of State of the African Union then instituted June 16 every year for the Day of the African Child to be commemorated. So it's a special day that's supposed to highlight the plight of the African child, assess continental national framework on implementation of various rights of the children, especially the right to education, which is a fundamental right. So at a special day like this, you expect the countries of the AU at the highest level come out with a position of government on investment in education, assessment on how the government is tackling issues that affect children, especially the one that has to do with education, and then making a firm commitment on the future of the right and welfare of children, especially that of their education.
Right.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the current state of education financing, for example, because that's really the bottom line, isn't it? Funding and improving the quality for children in Nigeria.
So whether, as you know, in Nigeria, we run a multi-level government and different levels of government are responsible for different levels of education. The federal government focuses on tertiary. They also have unity colleges. So largely the issue of primary and secondary education are for the state and local government. Also, the federal government also had the UBEC, which is an interventionist agency under the law that's supposed to assess about 1% or so of the money from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, which is supposed to be used to intervene at the basic education for children across the state. So unfortunately, whether at the international commitment level, continental charters and convention, and even national decisions or policy framework, we have not been able to meet investment and financing in education. As you may have heard, off stage, monies have been trapped in UBEC, and the law practically makes it discretionary in a favoritism manner for states to assess. And we have not also been able to oversight in terms of value for money, efficiency, and effectiveness of the monies being expended from UBEC to SUBEB and what have you. So at best, we have only been doing compliance audit, which has not addressed the issue. But the question as to if we have invested 1 naira, what did that 1 naira produce? You read the UNESCO report that even those that are in school, 4 out of them are not able, to read or understand the test. And we are talking about also 20 million out-of-school children. So you hear some states announce about enrollment, but nobody is addressing the issue of dropout and how do we tackle dropout. So financing has been poor, and even this current budget at state level, you don't get to hear what is allocated to education or how they're implementing the continental education strategy, because these things are outlined. It's just to commit to it and implement them.
Obviously, UNICEF was talking about giving a broad picture of what happens in Africa. There are variations depending on which country. I mean, what is the situation in Nigeria? Is it as bad as that 4 out of 5 children can't read or understand simple text, which is what the picture UNICEF is painting for the whole of Africa?
Well, I think the focus in Nigeria has been more about the out-of-school children, which is in the neighborhood of 20 million.
It's an astronomical amount.
It's
the worst in the world.
You know, and there are a lot of factors. Nigeria, of course, is a fragile society. There are a lot of violence, conflict, and fragilities across our communities that are keeping children out of school. And that is why part of our commitment and advocacy in this event is to call stakeholders and the private sector to reimagine and rethink how we deliver education in the Nigeria of today. It should go beyond the bricks and mortar buildings. Schools should be taken to community halls, should be taken to public places. It should be taken to where these children are hawking. We should get the teachers who have retired, back into the system to be able to meet up the quota. The teacher-student ratio is very high. And we don't even have the big data as to disaggregated data as to who is the enrollment and retention. Between JS1 to JS3, we care about the number of people that we have enrolled. How many of them, were able to complete their classes to JS3? And how many dropped out? Why did they drop out? How can we reach them, and be able to address the issue?
Right, so that's essentially it's your project Hope Alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
You organized that event today. The theme was education for all children in Africa. The time is now. Who attended the event? I mean,
a lot of people, a lot of dignitaries attended, and we targeted the National Assembly specifically because we're interested.
Right, are you going to give them a report or something?
Absolutely, a report will be sent. The speaker actually sent a representative. His essay on youth development, he participated in that event actively, and we are interested in the UBEC Act Amendment proposal. First, to increase allocation, and then to democratize the process of assessing funding in UBEC. And even
just explain for our viewers who might not know what UBEC is.
So Universal Basic Education. And then across states, they have adopted the state basic education boards that interact with the federal board. 1% or so allocation from the Consolidated Revenue Fund is channeled to that institution. They are supposed to use it to intervene both in providing school facilities, educational materials, because Chapter 2 of our Constitution and even the Child Rights Act 2023 makes it compulsory for children at primary level, to access education free of charge. So government, this is a burden and obligation of government to deliver to the people. And then, but we find out that both indirect costs associated with this so-called free education, we state governments and their institutions have to begin to look at those indirect costs. Because if you tell a school that you have to admit students for free, everything, for free, and yet they don't have printer, they don't have photocopy, they don't have basic office tools, they're going to find a way to get it. And then when they demand of this from poor and vulnerable people, they simply go home and start selling on the streets.
Yeah, so they basically drop out of school.
They drop out of school. So we need to look at the whole value chain and the process and ensure that it's starts. And financing is very key. And financing starts from designing a budget that is strictly addressing education. So at the national level, continental level, everybody agrees with Agenda AU Agenda 2063, AU Agenda 2040, chapter section 11 of it but it's 6 rather, is addressing that. Then the African Charter Section 11 is addressing compulsory education. Now look at Nigeria. There's a huge gap in early childhood education. We just talk about primary. Before you get to primary, the other levels of education completely privatized. So government needs to come, because we have a lot of vulnerable people that will not afford private early education.
And in fact, that time in a child's life is absolutely crucial.
Very crucial.
That is when you really learn and understand the basics. That's what education is supposed to teach you.
Yes, exactly.
And once you miss that period, it's very difficult. I mean, I know a lot of people who come up and, in terms of their language, their tenses, their ability to communicate, so many things. Once you miss that level, you've essentially missed it. And when you get older, it's impossible to go back to that level and start again. So the crucial imperative that this Day of the African Child underscores is ensuring the right to education for children in Africa.
In Africa. That's a fundamental right. Like every other right, civic right you know about. In fact, it's more critical because it's an enabler. And the children are the future of the country. If you're going to talk about sustainability of anything, then you look at the quality of the investment you make, on your children. And the quality of that investment will determine the quality of the individuals you're going to have to run your country for the future.
Chibuzor, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the work that you're doing. Chibuzor Okereke is a public affairs analyst, and he is one of the organizers of the Project Hope Alive event marking the 2024 Annual Day of the African Child. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.